Hi, I'm Neil Glines. I'm the Dean of the School of Liberal Arts, and I'd like to thank you for watching the Solano College Sports Network.
Hello, how's everyone doing tonight? Good. Awesome. Glad you came out. Thank you for supporting us. We appreciate it. I'd just like to give a hello to the students, the administrators, faculty, staff. My name is Darren Phelan, and I am a professor and coach of the speech and debate team here at Solano Community College. And I would like to welcome all of you to our annual speech night. First thing I want to do is I want to give a special thank you to all the people that made this possible. First, I'd like to thank our Dean, Neil Glines, who could not be here tonight, unfortunately, because it is his birthday. Next, I'd like to thank the Solano College Sports Network for filming this event. You'll see the camera set up all around. And you can look up the event at YouTube/SolanoCollege.com. I'd also like to give a thank to all our coaches, Brian Nelson, our student coach, one of our other coaches, Greg Poff, and most especially to Anna Patero, who is our Director of Forensics. And without her, this whole event would not have been possible. So we can give a thank you to Anna Patero. And lastly, I'd like to thank the campus community for your support. So tonight, the speech and debate team here at Solano College will be showcasing a variety of events, public speaking events that they compete in against other colleges across the United States. The Solano speech and debate team recently took first place at of all junior colleges at the Mustang Invitational, and took second place at the Paul Winters Invitational, which was held at ULP. So they're awesome. And with that said, it's pretty cool because they are all brand new students besides one of our kids. So all brand new kids, and they took first and second at a recent tournament. The proceeds from tonight's event will go towards helping our team fund our trip to state nationals, which will be going on in the spring. So we thank you for your time, for your money, and also for your support. So, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce the Solano Speech and Debate team, and they can come on out. So here is your first place taking Solano Speech and Debate team. If we can just give a round of applause, great job. Now tonight, how it's going to start is I will introduce a speaker, and they will introduce a fellow teammate who will then tell you about the student and his or her event. So the rest of you may go, but with no further ado, the first speaker is going to be, or the first speaker that we'll be introducing is going to be Dulce Walton, who competes in debate, persuasive speaking, and informative speaking, and she also took first place at the first tournament she ever attended. So with no further ado, here's Dulce. Thank you.
Persuasive speaking is where the speaker provides the audience with a problem and then, in their speech, provide a solution to the problem. It is an 8 to 10 minute speech which includes approximately 8 to 10 sources supporting the arguments the speaker is making. To present the persuasive speech of the evening, we have Lucy Murillo. Lucy joined the speech team this semester, and at her first tournament presenting the speech last weekend, Lucy earned first place from every single judge. We call that in the speech and debate community a picket fence. So please welcome Lucy Murillo.
On September 4th, 2014, Sean Grubert, a Caucasian police officer in South Carolina, shot fire 4 times at an African-American male after the man reached into his car when asked to see his driver's license. Fortunately, the dash camera on the police officer's patrol car clearly shows evidence that Grubert had absolutely no compelling need to use deadly force against Jones. Incidents like these, however, rarely occur directly in front of patrol cars, making it very easy for police officers to claim that the force was necessary. The ensuing plethora of similar news reports brought to the public's attention an undeniable racial element of Caucasian police officers allegedly wrongfully harming and sometimes killing ethnic minorities. Occurrences like these, which are brought to light in the media, spotlight the already widespread distrust between civilians and police officers, which is why police officers should be required to wear cameras on their uniforms. Wearable cameras can provide clear, reliable, objective accounts of every police officer's working day. In an interview with the Washington Post on October 11, 2014, Christian Klausner, Executive Director of the DC Office of Police Complaints, stated that wearable cameras will lead to enhanced public trust and ultimately greater public safety. Clear evidence will serve to ensure that justice is served for those wrongfully harmed or for the police officers wrongfully accused. Therefore, I propose it be mandated that police officers are equipped with wearable cameras while on duty. To accomplish this, we must first examine the effects of the distrust in law enforcement and discrimination within the legal system. Second, expose the causes. And finally, consider wearable cameras as a viable solution to this rising problem. The troublesome relationship between citizens and law enforcement is nothing new. Statistically, ethnic minority groups tend to have a more hostile attitude towards police officers. We cannot deny that racial discrimination has occurred within our criminal justice system and irrefutably still occurs today. For example, on August 9, 2014, MSNBC reported that St. Louis County Police Lieutenant Patrick Hayes encouraged his officers to target blacks. His exact words were, "Let's have a black day. Let's make the jail cells more colorful." Clearly, there is a disparity in how people of color are treated in comparison to non-minorities. According to Jeffrey Reiner in The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison on October 11, 2014, numerous studies of police use of deadly force show that blacks and Hispanics are considerably more likely than whites to be shot by the police. In addition, he says, numerous studies show that African Americans are more likely to be arrested, indicted, convicted, and committed to an institution than are whites who commit the same offenses. For example, according to a ProPublica analysis of federally collected data on fatal police shootings, on September 12, 2014, African American males are 21 times greater at risk to be the victims of police shootings. For example, according to UPI News on October 11, 2014, a police officer who accused 43-year-old Eric Gardner of selling unlicensed cigarettes put him in a chokehold, from which he later died. On August 25, 2014, 22-year-old John Crawford was shot and killed by police inside his local Walmart in Ohio because a customer accused him of walking around the store with a gun. Both men were African American, and both incidents were caught on camera. Unfortunately, the evidence is fragmented, as investigators are having to piece video evidence together from several sources, which has led to an increased mistrust in law enforcement. The effects of inconsistent video evidence and lack of trust in police compel us to uncover the causes. A major aspect of the lack of trust in police is that there is a disproportionate representation of minorities as police officers. The reality is that most police departments lack racial diversity, especially in communities whose populations are composed primarily of ethnic minority groups. This is an issue because the people being paid to protect these communities are not properly reflecting its residents. According to the New York Times on September 9, 2014, experts say that diversity in the police force increases their credibility with their community, which is crucial for a well-functioning society. The people inhabiting a community need to feel safe and need to believe that law enforcement officials carry their best interest at heart. Unfortunately, within our criminal justice system, there is also a lack of accountability. Without video recordings or viable eyewitnesses, cases surrounding the use of deadly force by police become a he said, she said situation. Having to weigh what one person says happened to what a police officer says happened is a very messy situation, especially when there is minimal evidence. And in the end, either a corrupt police officer will not be reprimanded for their actions, or a police officer merely carrying out their duties will be accused of acting immorally and unlawfully. Either way, the safety of both civilians and uniformed police officers alike is in jeopardy. Clearly, the effects and causes of the growing distrust in law enforcement and discrimination within that system requires some serious consideration of some solutions. We need to support a national movement of transparency in our legal system. To that end, police officers should be required to be equipped with wearable cameras while on duty. Wearable dime-sized cameras can clip onto the collar of a shirt or onto the sides of glasses and provide a high-definition recording of anything in the officer's view. As soon as a police officer's shift begins, the camera must be turned on and has to remain turned on until the end of their shift. If the recordings are not requested within a 3-month threshold, then they may be deleted. American City and County on June 25, 2014, reported that benefits of the cameras include reducing misconduct complaints through improved police-citizen encounters, facilitating complaint resolution, enhancing officer training, and improving cities' criminal justice systems. As Hawthorne's Mayor Chris Brown described, wearable cameras would provide accountability for the public and for officers. Wearable cameras would also improve police officers' behavior as well as citizens' behavior towards them, as people tend to behave better when on camera. In fact, according to the previously cited New York Times, a study conducted in the Rialto Police Department showed that with only 27 of the police force's 54 officers wearing cameras at any given time, the department saw an 88% decrease in the number of complaints filed against police and a 60% decrease in the number of times police officers used force. Better yet, police officers gave positive feedback in relation to wearing the cameras. In an interview with the Washington Post on October 13, 2014, District Attorney Jill Ravitch stated any time you can enhance your collection of evidence for a presentation to a fact finder, it's a good thing. She also states that she welcomes any tool that will help them seek the truth. In the past few minutes, we have examined the effects of the lack of trust in police, uncovered the causes behind such distrust, before offering a solution that will exponentially better the relationship between citizens and law enforcement. If our criminal justice system isn't improved, people will keep being killed at the hands of racism by those who are in charge of protecting and defending us. While we are all familiar with the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and John Crawford in Ohio, I am hopeful that when a situation like this happens again, which many more will, we won't ask what happened. We will ask them to show us what happened.
Thank you, Lucy, for that wonderful performance. The next performance we're going to do is poetry. So it's an interpretation of literature. Like persuasive speaking, this type of speech is also 8 to 10 minutes long. Think of interpretation as literature as acting adjacent, where the performer portrays different characters around a central theme. Tonight, David Hayward will be performing his poetry program, where his literature is comprised entirely of poems inside a small black binder. This is David's first year on the team. He took second place at our most recent tournament and was first in the event at the Golden Gate Opener in San Francisco State. So please, give a round of applause for David Hayward.
Very good.
Guilty of a crime, $1,000 fine. But sir, I don't have a dime. I'll just serve my time. But your honor, please, really? All them fees? Shut up, black boy. We'll give you some time. Admit you to bail. Now, how much do you need? We'll work with you. Such greed. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Oh, yeah, yeah. On June 12, 2012, the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, said that here in the U.S., we lock people up at up to $50,000 a pop. The state of Louisiana alone has 5 times the incarcerations as Iran, 13 times more than China, and 20 times more than Germany. It is a $182 million industry. Now the question is, are we going to lock up our citizens, Or are we going to educate them on the front end? Secretary of Education Duncan asked. The following poetry interpretation depicts the state of despair in for-profit prisons if we continue to incarcerate instead of educate in Where Are You, Where Are We by Mark Andrews, The Darkest Side of the Sun by Jonathan Bytadis, Illegal Verses by Hardy Parkinson, The Cell by Edward Moody, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, and Working the Clay by Jim Moreno. Educate, don't incarcerate. Where are you? Where are we? We're sitting here, doing time at HMP. Part of life long done, and many stories to tell about where we were and how we fell. The broken families, the debts, the pain. Oh, it can make you sad. Or it can drive you insane with a life full of fast cars, booze, and drugs. Man, we used to think, wow! But that's all behind us. Let's think of that. Where are we now? It's times like these that we count the cost of all the wrongs we did and all that we lost, because now we're here. Now we're here in this room designed for one, just one, deprived of the wind, deprived of the rain, and deprived of the sun. Hello, convicts. Nice to meet you. I'm a prison cell, 6x9, born in hell. My nickname, the can, the slammer, the big house. I'm the place that many fear, because for some, there ain't no way out. Now I take away your son, and I replace him with misery instead. When you're with me, most folks consider you dead. Convicts, they think that they're all alone, but if you listen real closely, you can hear my groan. All the pictures that you put all over your wall, they're stuck to my skin, and I hear your voice and all your prayers at night, even when you're only whispering. Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Oh, brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. So what is it? What is it that's not being said? Why is it that the news is not really news? Is it because the nose only hype the nose? Is it because the eyes only look the other way? There's no real truth about the greed that robs, that felons our schools, cutting funds, fogging futures. There's no real facts like the 2 Keystone State judges pocketing bribes from Pennsylvania prisons in return for long-term sentences, foisted on the helpless, unsuspecting young. Now here's the thing. I visit prisons all the time, and they're filled with men whose greatest crime is that they haven't got a dime. They languish there in their prison cells, unable to make their bails, because for the higher the bonds are set, that means the more money the judges get. Being trapped down inside this asylum. Ain't no rest for the deranged. I've lost my will to change. The darkness has imprisoned me. It's all I see. We're dominated here by anarchy. I cannot live. I cannot die. So why do I even try? Ain't nothing but dead memories just rolling, lingering through my mind. And here I carry this weight on my spine. It's creeping up on me like a thief in the night. Can't you see I'm not all right? Now I make it hotter in the summer, and I make it colder in the winter. Your pain is always my pleasure. When the board paroles you then, oh, look at that. In comes yet another calm. No remorse for your tears. I see that way too often. When you cry, I make you feel like you live, like you rot in a coffin. I watch you when you're eating. I play tricks on your mind while you sleep. I'll make you dream that you're free. In the night. Then when the morning comes, you'll always wake up to me, face to face, locked up in a cage. Mother, mother, everybody thinks we're wrong. Oh, but who are they to judge us? Simply 'cause our hair is long. Oh, you know we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Oh, yeah, yeah. So don't look the other way. No, don't look the other way. Because language is your clay. Again, what is it? What is it that's not being said? Could it be that capitalism is broken? Or could it be that democracy remains a spoken token? Children kill children on our streets. Politicals kill education. The smoking guns, class, war, heat. Judge, and your prisons for profits. Correction Corporation of America. Now, could this be the source of our collective discontent? Are you driven to inaction by the weapons of mass distraction? The painted mask? The Disney portrait? Are you sensed away from outrage? Cajoled away from action? Reversing revolution? Presumed innocent, they still serve their time. Are not convicted of any crime, but despairing, lingering, suffering there in a prison cell. They plead guilty just to get out of jail. And so, my friends, as you all can plainly see, that's not the way that it's supposed to be.
You really enjoy this road, because we're floating here. We're sinking here in this nasty pool of urine, while blowing smoke rings of negative fumes. Ah! And you're pouring salt on my open wounds while dancing there to Lucifer's drums. What's the use? I'll never see the sunshine again because it never, ever comes.
Now I can change your life, but that's only if you ain't stuck here doing life. Because I'm the one holding all the cards now when you're caught in this uprising. Well, check this out. Maybe one day, just maybe one day, I'll open up my gates to set you free. But you'll always be my property because I've left this lifelong scar on your very soul. You may leave me one day, but you'll always remember me. The cell. Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Come on, talk to me so you can see what's going on. Tell me what's going on. 15 prisoners sitting on a dock. Not a single one would be there if only he had a buck. Without any money, looks like they're flat out of luck. All they're bound to get is a judicial smug. Really? Tell me, what's going on?
Informative speaking is an 8 to 10 minute speech in which the speaker informs the audience about a subject that should not be controversial, as the subject is not providing an opinion on the subject. The purpose is to give the audience news that we can use, while amusing and hopefully amazing us. For those of you in the Communication 1 classes, note the structure, content, delivery, and how the sources are cited in the speech. Remington Green is a first-year speech and debate student and will be presenting the informative speech. Remington won first place at our most recent tournament hosted by San Joaquin Delta College. Remington was also the 6th top speaker in debate, along with her partner, whom you will hear later, Maria Alejandra, who were quarterfinalists in debate. Please welcome Remington Green.
Chef Anthony Bourdain, in his show, No Reservations on the Travel Channel, travels the world introducing his viewers to different culinary experiences, from blood cake in London to avian sphincter muscle in Korea. Yes, it's exactly what you think it is, and no, it's not quite finger-licking good. But what Bourdain teaches us is food is everything we are. It's an extension of nationalist feeling, ethnic feeling, your personal history, your province, your region, your tribe, even your grandma. On one of his travels, Bourdain encounters a delicacy in Chengdu, China. That's 67% protein, 18% fat, and 100% cricket. Gryllus spinaculatus, to be exact. This new, sustainable source of protein is edging its way in the West between casein and soy in all shapes and forms. Crickets are being used to make everything from pancakes and muffins to protein smoothies and tortilla chips. But the best thing about crickets is that they're also easy on our planet. According to The Guardian, on July 1st, 2014, an Ohio-based startup aims to introduce Americans to what 2 billion people worldwide already believe, that crickets can be a delicious, inexpensive, and environmentally friendly source of protein. Using substantially less land and water than livestock, crickets also emit significantly less greenhouse gases. Therefore, let's begin with an appetizer on the production of crickets. Second, serve your main course on the uses of crickets, before rounding off our meal with a dessert full of the implications of this crunchy cousin of the grasshopper. Native Americans have a long history of eating insects. According to Nature Education on June 6, 2013, as Western cultures began to interact, the West began imposing their own values onto the groups, discouraging and suppressing the practice. See, in their eyes, eating insects was considered primitive. Though most Westerners still turn their noses up at the idea of eating these small, six-legged creatures, The Guardian on September 1st, 2014 notes that crickets have numerous attributes that make them highly attractive sources of delicious and sustainable food. Ohio-based cricket farmer tells New York Times in an interview on August 21st, 2013, that not only are crickets nutritious, but the process of making them is simple. On his farm, which is similar to most, he houses about 3,000 crickets in large troughs in about a 5,000 square foot warehouse, where he keeps the temperature approximately 80 to 90 degrees. And for all of those of you who need free-range, grass-fed, no hormones-added ingredients, you'll be pleased to find that crickets actually live a good life. They're fed organic feed and the freshest of vegetables, and when they're good and fat, Bakuber says, he puts them into a coffin freezer, which induces a state of hibernation, except they never wake up. Approximately 2 pounds of feed and 1 gallon of water will produce 1 pound of crickets. For 24 square foot space, that's 30 pounds of crickets. Now, over an 8-week span, that's 6,250 pounds of crickets, according to Food Republic on April 1st, 2014. Having tasted our first course on the production of crickets, let's delve into our main course on the uses of crickets. Bugs aren't anything we haven't eaten before. Interestingly enough, there are approximately 5 billion people who are not fond of eating insects, yet are insect eaters, albeit unknowingly to the tune of 2 pounds of flies, maggots, and other insects each year. Even more fascinating is they're part of our everyday lunch and dinner, and the FDA knows all about it. In fact, the FDA reported on its website on June 10, 2014, that it allows for a small amount of harmless but unavoidable defects in processed foods, including insect parts, larvae eggs, and insect sacs. Now, crickets come from the ground, the earth. They're used and harvested in various ways. According to Slate.com, last accessed September 11, 2013, crickets are a protein powder source that supply a complete amino acid profile, which are all 9 essential amino acids required for human nutrition. And if you're feeling a little queasy over the idea of eating bugs straight, there are tons of other ways to eat them without actually feeling like you're eating insects, which can be a great tool for mothers who need to get more protein into their children's diets. Our moms have already lied to us about putting vegetables in our dinner. Imagine cookies made with cricket flour. The previously cited New York Times conducted an interview with Joanne Miller, the owner of Biddy Foods, an online cookie company, where she and other American entrepreneurs in her field believe that crickets are poised to ignite food craze. Because cricket flour has packed with nutritious benefits and other great things, they are the key to a sustainable future because they require much less food, water, land, space, and time than traditional livestock. Plus, they're already being raised for pet food. Now, farmers like Kevin Bakuber are raising them for human consumption. They eat well, process well, are easy to care for, and are nutritional powerhouses. To that end, restaurant owners Greg Suitz and Gabby Lewis have decided to develop their own cricket bars and other edible delights, where they believe that they have power to make these crickets universal. To that end, restaurant owners Greg Suitz and Gabby Lewis have decided to develop their own cricket bars and other edible delights, where they believe that crickets are poised to ignite a food craze. According to an interview with NPR on August 21st, 2014, Suitz and Lewis's philosophy begins with packaging that doesn't include an image of a single cricket. The same mentality goes for not thinking of soy when you eat a soy-based protein bar. Protein from insects like crickets has one of the least environmental impacts on the world and is a viable long-term solution to meeting protein needs in an overpopulated world, which, according to Pew Research, is supposed to reach 9.6 billion by 2050. The main course on the uses of crickets was filling, but I've saved just enough room for a dessert full of the implications of this crunchy cousin of the grasshopper. Over the years, climate change has reduced agricultural productivity. Overfishing has dwindled freshwater resources. Pollution from pesticides and fertilizers and a host of other factors have all led to food scarcity in many parts of the world. According to the United Nations website, last accessed September 11, 2013, 2 of the United Nations 8 Millennium Developmental Goals, as of September 2013, is to eradicate extreme poverty, hunger, and reduce child mortality rates by expanding the consumption of edible insects. As our human population continues to grow, scientists are constantly looking for more sustainable food sources. The aforementioned Scientist magazine states that humans currently consume 40% of potential terrestrial productivity, 30% of which is used to pasture and feed livestock. Now, crickets don't take up much space, nor do they require as much food as cows, who need approximately 8 grams of feed to gain 1 gram of weight, while crickets only need 2 grams of feed to gain 1 gram of weight. As it turns out, there are approximately 2 billion people who actively consume insects as part of their diets. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, for example, caterpillars are abundantly available all year round in markets. In African countries, insects are mostly eaten by the native. And in Southeast Asia, a plethora of insects prepared and concocted in different ways are constantly being marketed to tourists. Consider caramel glazed cricket crunch coated flan. I know what you're thinking. Ew, flan. Caterpillars, bees, and other insects may be delicacies now, but in the future, they may become a food staple to you and I. Today, we've hopefully gained an appetite for a different kind of food product by taking a bite into the production of crickets, enjoying a second course on the uses of crickets, before cleansing our palates with the benefits of this delectably crunchy treat. We may be running out of space, and the climate may force us to reconsider other forms of nourishment. Insects, like crickets, could be colorful, flavorful additions to our plates. Bon appetit.
Hi, my name is Monica Brown, and I'm a trustee on the Solano Community College Board. I want to thank you for watching the Solano Sports Network.
It began intercollegiately in the United States in 1994. There are 2 teams, the government which affirms or upholds the resolution, while the loyal opposition negates the resolution. The government is represented by the Prime Minister and the member of government, while the opposition is represented by the leader of opposition and the member of opposition. Each speaker presents an argument for their supporting side, and in the end, the Prime Minister and the leader of opposition will provide rebuttals stating why their side wins. At the end of the debate, you, the audience, will decide who wins. Now, this event is one in which the audience participates. So if you hear an argument that you like, you are welcome to tap on your lap or tap your feet or say "hear, hear" when you hear an argument you like. For example, cookies are delicious. So on the opposite side, if you hear an argument that you don't like, you're allowed to say boo or shame. So if I say we should replace all cookies with oatmeal raisin cookies. See? A lot of people don't like oatmeal raisin cookies. Personally, I wanted just to distribute lettuce and old tomatoes so you can just chuck them up there, but no. Apparently the janitorial staff doesn't like that. Our debaters this evening representing the government are Alice Hoover and Maria Alejandro Jaramillo. And on the opposition, Rebecca DeSantis and Destiny Smith. Alice is a second-year student and a state champion in the NFA Lincoln Douglas debate. Maria Alejandra
along with their debate partner Remington, from whom you heard earlier, were both quarterfinalists at their very first tournament this last weekend. Rebecca and Destiny are brand new members of the team and were octo finalists at the last weekend's tournament, hosted by the University of Pacific. With that, debating tonight's topic, trigger warnings do more harm than good. Please welcome our Alice, Maria, Alejandra, Rebecca, and Destiny.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying with us the entire night. We are representing the affirmative, and the resolution for today is this House believes that trigger warnings do more harm than good. This is going to be a value round because what we're trying to do is evaluate whether trigger warnings are better, if they do more good, or if they're harmful for students. The definitions we'll be dealing with today are this House is going to be Solano Community College. Trigger warnings is going to be a statement at the beginning of a class, lecture, or course alerting students that it may contain potentially distressing material. And for the phrase more harm than good, we're looking at academia only, not internet, not anything else, only when it comes to school. Our value for today is going to be education. Our criteria is going to be whoever best upholds value of education. And our burdens are that, as the government team, we must show that trigger warnings do more harm than good, and the opposition must show that trigger warnings do more good than harm. So let's get right into it. Our first contention is that it increases closed-minded attitudes. Our thesis for this is that by having trigger warnings, it makes students less open-minded about topics that encourages closed-minded attitudes. Our first point is, for example, that the Huffington Post on May 20th said that students can get up and leave if they want to be close-minded about a topic when trigger warnings are used in classes. We have another example of Galileo, for example, when he came up with the theory that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth, the Catholic Church decided to put him on house arrest because they didn't want to deal with it. So this is a perfect example of when people want to be close-minded about something, they just shove it to the side and they don't deal with it. We don't want to do that. Our tie back to this is that trigger warnings lead to decreased education because they encourage close-minded attitudes among students. Our second contention is that it decreases academic freedom. Our thesis for this is that professors are not able to be as flexible in their class time, and that decreases academic freedom for both the professors and the students. Our backing point number one is that according to the New York Times on May 17th, Rutgers University has suggested trigger warnings for books for English teachers. For example, Huckleberry Finn, trigger warning for racism, The Great Gatsby, trigger warning for gore, abuse, misogyny, all of that. Also, our third point is that American Association of University Professors says that trigger warnings will decrease student and teacher academic freedom. There is a second point, but my partner will deal with that. Our tie-back is that trigger warnings decrease education because they limit the academic freedom of teachers and students. Again, very harmful. Our third contention is that it decreases student enrollment. Our thesis here is that trigger warnings decrease the number of students signed up for sensitive classes. For example, here at Solano, we have classes such as History of African Americans or the History of Women. If we encourage trigger warnings, people are going to want to sign up for these classes because they deal with sexism and racism, and that's not what we want. We want to enroll the more students so they can be more open-minded, so they can have different perspectives about our history and be well-informed. Because if that was the case, eventually classes will be canceled, and it would be the students who would suffer in the end. Again, our tie back to this is that trigger warnings decrease education because they decrease students' involvement for classes, and that decreases the perspectives and information to them. So again, this is why you're voting for the government, because we think that trigger warnings are more harmful than good.
flowing, I'm going to be going to the opposition side and then addressing the government's contentions here, and I will be keeping my time as in rounds. We do have to keep our own time, and we're expected to know how long we are taking. So to get this started, I want to thank everyone for being here. It's really actually nice to have an audience for the first time. And moving on to the first bit of information here is that we are going to grant the government's definitions, their criteria, and their value. So moving on to our first counter contention, for those of you flowing, our title is PTSD and Stigma. Our thesis is that the trigger warnings will apply to students with PTSD and or a troubled past. The trigger warnings will warn them early of difficult materials, such as in a syllabus, and encourage them to seek help, deter re-traumatization, and eliminate the stigma assigned when they jump up in the middle of class or are leaving the classroom. Our backing is the UC Santa Barbara student Bailey Laverne in the Washington Post in May made a statement of, we're not talking about someone walking away from something they don't want to see. Students actually perceive a very real threat. Imagine the most terrifying or painful moment of your life and then imagine reliving it in the middle of class. So these students perceive this very real threat, and students who leave when a difficult subject is presented are now publicly declaring their response to the material. Our tieback is trigger warnings allow students the opportunity to remove themselves from a negative situation before it becomes catastrophic. They eliminate re-traumatization in academia by no longer forcing students to sit through damaging material. Trigger warnings also shut the door on an opportunity for bullying, as students will no longer be subject to ridicule for leaving the classroom, all of which will increase student education. Our second counter contention is keeping students in seats. Our thesis is trigger warnings keep students engaged by allowing instructors free rein, maybe more so with these warnings in place, to material they deem educational. We're not asking that they not teach us, but simply warn us of what they will be teaching. Students who will will choose to be in the classrooms and continue to stay enrolled in their classes with better understanding of the course material. Our backing is the Huffington Post reported in October of 2014 on a college professor requiring students to write about their fantasies and previous experiences, both good and bad. And this professor would dock their grade if their journals weren't in-depth or long enough, no pun intended. Huffington Post Live reported on May 9th of 2014 of a course on human sexuality, where in the second meeting of this class, a naked woman demonstrated a vibrating stimulation marital aid. Students were unaware and unprepared for this demonstration. Our tieback is, this will keep students, trigger warnings will keep students in their seats and engaged by warning them and allowing those interested in subject matter to stay. This won't penalize students who are uncomfortable participating if a large portion of their grade depends on this. Keeping students engaged in the course will increase their education through willingness to participate. Our third counter contention is improved teacher performance. Many of the instructors can say here, part of delivery is overcoming the audience's preconceived notions. Instructors will stretch their understanding of the material and impart this to their students by showing it through different lenses. Our backing is students from several reputable universities have requested more thoughtful treatment of subject matter. Some instructors are doing a disservice to their students by simply slapping them in the face with only one perspective. Our tieback is students will have improved education because their instructors will be forced to present material through multiple angles and being aware of the implications and subject matter to the audience. Since students are asking for us to increase their education this way, and they're paying the bill, why aren't we giving it to them? To their first contention, I will say cross-apply our counter-contention to number 2. We are keeping students in their seats, plain and simple. They are going to want to see this material, and they're going to stay in their seats. To their second contention, it's going to decrease academic freedom. I argue our counter-contention 3, improving teacher performance. Give our students what they're asking for. And finally, to their third contention, they give you no backing. So you can completely disregard their third contention. Thank you.
quick roadmap for everyone who's flowing. I'm going to go off case to the arguments that Becky brought up for counter contentions. Then I'll go back on case to Maria Alejandra and my arguments. So, going first on to counter contention 1, titled PTSD and Stigma. Now, pretty much what they're telling you is that by having trigger warnings, this allows for students with troubled pasts to avoid these things. And they give you the example of the student from UC Santa Barbara who says, now people aren't going to get up just because they don't feel like sitting and listening to this. They're only going to get up if they're actually bothered. However, students currently get up if they don't want to listen to something and leave. If you give an excuse like a trigger warning, students are only going to be more encouraged to do this. While it is important to have students be able to excuse themselves from these things, many professors are actually very open-minded and willing to work with students if they have sensitive information and sensitivities in regards to these things. Having trigger warnings only hurts education because now students have another excuse for, oh, I'm going to skip class today. I'll just say they were talking about something I didn't want, that I was sensitive to. This is only going to actually harm people who actually have these problems because then it's going to make light of an issue that is actually very traumatizing to them. Because people aren't going to see PTSD or things like this as important because they think of it as just an excuse to skip class. So you can see this is actually going to hurt education because students will now have an excuse to get up and leave class, and they won't take these matters as seriously for the students who actually struggle with these things. Going on to counter contention 2, titled Keeping Students in the Seats, they try to tell you that this gives teachers more free reign, and they give you the example of the college professor who had them write about their previous sexual experiences and the naked woman stimulating herself in front of class.
Hear, hear.
Neither of these, as much as some people might want to see this, neither of these actually deal with trigger warnings, so it's not showing how trigger warnings are actually increasing education. Those are things that teachers can do right now. With the example that we give you with English teachers, if you have a trigger warning, then a teacher has to be very careful when branching out during class. Maybe in English you're talking about Huckleberry Finn, and you're talking about the importance of how when Huck Finn starts to use Jim and call him by his name. However, you might have to be very wary and be like, oh, sorry guys, I know you want to talk about this, but we can't because trigger warnings and I didn't warn you about this before, so sorry, we can't do this. Or people who are sensitive to that type of information have to now get up in the middle of class and walk out. What's that going to do for a stigma? I don't know about you, but having to stand up in the middle of a conversation and leave is going to be just as bad because now students are going to be like, oh, maybe they left because they are sensitive to this information. And that's going to give them an even greater stigma. So you can see this actually hurts education because teachers are now more limited to how flexible they can be in class to going and talking about what the students actually want to discuss and have to stay strictly on whatever they told the students before because they have to give you a plan of, oh, this is what we're talking about today, and they can't branch off from that.
Yeah.
Going on to counter contention 3 of improving teacher performance, they say part of delivery is overcoming preconceived notions. However, if you force a teacher to have only one way to approach a subject and they can't go at it from other angles because of these sensitive information and they have to have trigger warnings on every single thing they bring up, then that's going to limit their ability to actually teach and their ability to inform students about the information they want to do. Look specifically to the example that Maria Alejandra gives you when she tells you that the American Association of University Professors say that trigger warnings decrease teacher and student academic freedom. At the point where we can't be as flexible and talk about the things that we actually are interested in class, then you can see that's actually going to decrease education because now students are going to be bored, teachers are limited in the things they can talk about, and it's overall insulting teachers' common sense. Teachers who have gone to school for plenty of years know what they should be sensitive about and what they shouldn't be. They have common sense. They've gone through years of training to be professionals. They know how to deal with these topics gently and bring them up in a way that's not going to harm students. With that, you can see that their off-case positions don't really stand. So let's go on-case and once again look at why you're voting for Maria Alejandra and I on the affirmative. Now, on contention 1, the only thing they say is cross-apply keeps students in the seat. However, they didn't really explain this, so let me just reinforce what Maria Alejandra told you. Currently, if students have a closed-minded idea and they don't want to learn about something, such as with the church in Galileo, they're going to put it somewhere where they don't have to deal with it. The Huffington Post even stated that students, if they don't want to listen to something, can just get up and leave. So if we're talking about racism or sexism and someone doesn't want to change their opinion, they can just get up and leave the class for no reason at all.
and they can't be penalized for that at all. So you see, this is actually going to increase closed-minded attitudes, because if you don't want to listen to something, now you don't have to. And that's why you should definitely keep these things. On contention 2, once again, they didn't really explain this. It's been shown by teachers and students that this decreases the academic freedom, so that's another bad thing. And we want to help increase that freedom. And on counter contention 3, we give you the example of African American history and women in American history. If students don't sign up for these classes, then they're going to cancel them. And that's a whole new avenue of education that we can no longer have here at Solano, because people had trigger warnings on these classes. So that's why you should vote for the affirmative team here. Thank you.
I am going to start with the affirmative, and then I'm going to move on to opposition. So starting with the affirmative, their contention number 1 talks about closed-minded attitudes. One of the things they're saying is that what's going to happen is that people are going to get up during class just because they don't want to hear something that's being talked about. This is why we need warning triggers. Because if we have warning triggers, there's no reason for any student to get up during class because they've been warned ahead of time. So it's not causing closed-minded attitudes, it's actually allowing them to be in a classroom and hear all the multiple sides of racism or of some of these kind of tricky subjects, but they're warned ahead of time, so there's no reason for them to be traumatized in this situation. The contention number 2, showing academic freedom. We don't agree with this. The UC Santa Barbara, in their resolution that's asking for trigger warnings, say that we're not banning the content or excusing students from learning it. This is according to New York Times. So we're not saying don't talk about it. We're not saying take the information out. We're just saying let us know ahead of time. We don't need any surprises. And their contention number 3, they actually dropped in their speech, so you can just drop that when the student enrollment was not talked about or brought up again. So now moving on to the opposition here, our counter contention number 1 is labeled PTSD and stigma. So here's the backstory of Bailey Lovered, who actually is pushing for this resolution at UC Santa Barbara. She was a victim of sexual assault, and she was sitting in a classroom where they showed a video with a detailed rape scene, where she was sitting there reliving the trauma of what she had gone through with no warning. If she got up in the middle of class, she would have had the stigma of being a victim of a sexual assault. This is not okay. It's not okay to put victims who have already gone through so much back through re-traumatization with no warning. We're just saying warn them ahead of time. Bailey doesn't need to be re-traumatized. She needs to know what's going to be presented so that she can prepare herself ahead of time. We're saying here that the tieback is when you're in trauma, you're not learning. When Bailey was watching this video, there was no education happening. She wasn't learning anything. She was reliving a trauma that had happened to her. So without warning triggers, you see education decreasing. Our counter contention number 2 is that it's going to keep students in seats. Really, the simpleness of this is that if you know ahead of time, why would you leave class? There's no reason to leave class. Students will choose to take the classes where they know they're having information that they're interested in. The problem here that our affirmative team was talking about was that teachers know how to deal with sensitive material because they're professionals. Yes, that's true. However, the professor that we talked about earlier, who the Huffington Post talked about, was having girls write detailed sexual fantasies in a journal. And if they didn't have enough details, he docked their grade. This was not on the syllabus. They had no warning that this was what their grade was dependent on. We need warning triggers so that you don't sign up for a class that requires you to watch a naked woman stimulating herself or sit through a detailed rape scene or have journals with your detailed sexual fantasies or exploits. This is stuff we should know about ahead of time. I don't want to sign up for some class and be subjected to stuff that I didn't know I would be subjected to. It's not okay. Yeah. And then our counter contention number 3, is that it's simply going to improve teacher performance. We're not saying don't talk about these things. We're just saying think about it ahead of time. Think about how the information is going to affect your students. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So, I only have 2 minutes, which I would normally have 5 for this speech, or no, excuse me, 4 for this speech. So, you guys are going to have to hold on tight. I'm going to make it as simple and easy as possible. We're going to go to the government side first, and then to our side. I'm going to give you your voters as why you are voting for the opposition today. You guys ready? Okay. All right. So, first of all, I want to go to their case, or to the government case. On their first contention, they don't give you any backing that this closed-minded stuff will happen. They don't give you any backing that people are going to close their mind to the material presented to them. They just simply say that it's going to happen. So just throw that one out the window. Their second contention is that teachers will be limited. And to that, I say, who cares? I'm paying the bill. Give me what I am asking for. Plain and simple. To their third contention, I bring up the fact that the member of government dropped this contention. So take that one right off of your flow right now. And not only that, but don't allow the Prime Minister to bring it up in her rebuttal, because it should have been addressed in the member of government speech. So, going on to our contentions, PTSD and stigma for our first contention is going to be your first voter. So, label your first voter. Don't re-traumatize our students. We are giving them back their education by not traumatizing them or putting them through material that they are not prepared to handle yet. The second voter is stigma. Don't stigmatize our students. We're already having a problem with bullying in the lower schools, such as elementary school, middle school, and high school. Let's not let it carry over to college. Let's let these students thrive in their classrooms and get the education that they're looking for by not stigmatizing them and pushing them out of the classroom. Just give them the warning is all we're asking for. And for your third voter, give the students what they want. Our third contention is simply this. The students are asking for it. The teachers are trying to constrict it and say that it's going to limit their teaching. We say no, it's going to make them expand their teaching abilities and present the information in a whole new light. Give the students what they want. Thank you.
Okay, very intense in this room, definitely. It's a good challenge. Thank you for everybody, for the audience, our opponents, definitely for a good challenge, and definitely to my partner. So now we're going to go off case first to talk about their plan, and then we're going to go on case to the affirmatives plan. So their first counter contention was that of PTSD and stigma. Like my partner plainly said, this is just going to give students the excuse to walk out of class when they're going to use what other people do, what other people feel as an excuse so they can get out of class. They're not going to be learning about the stuff that they need to be learning about. Let's face it, the world has some really ugly truths, and we need to be exposed to them. We can't just say, no, I don't want to know about racism. Well, guess what? If you don't know about racism, you're not going to fix it, and that's not what we need in education right now. Their second counter contention was that it keeps students in their seats because it hurts education. Again, you were just warning people right there and then, hey, if you want to get out, you can get out right now. If you're sensitive to this, you can get out. Everybody's going to watch that. Everybody's going to see how sensitive people feel, and they're probably going to be mocked. Is that what we want out of our students? No, we want strong students that can face the ugly truths again. So this is actually going to hurt education.
Their third counter contention is that it's going to improve the freedom of teachers. We know that's not true. When you are going to limit someone as to what they say, when you are going to limit them with the passion that they can say something, because first they have to give you an excuse, that's not giving them more freedom, that's hindering the message that is being made. So first, go again our own case. Why you're voting for us is because our first contention was that it's going to increase closed-mindedness. Again, you can't encourage people to just look away when they don't want to see the ugly truth of the world. Guess what? There's still discrimination in this world. And if you don't want to see it and you walk out of class, you never get to learn that it's been in the past, in the present, and probably in the future. So guess what? You're not going to want to deal with it. Our contention number 2 is that it decreases academic freedom. Again, for the students, for the teachers, it's not a good thing. And our contention number 3 is that it's going to decrease student enrollment in college because they're going to see and pick and choose what classes they want to take. Doesn't matter if it's good for them. So guess what? You're going to vote for the affirmative today because we're not going to put up with this bullshit about trigger warnings. But wait, let me do that again with a trigger warning. Now, you're going to vote for us today because folks, I'm going to use a bad word right now, so if you're sensitive, please walk out. Is anybody? Okay, like I said, you are going to vote because it's bullshit and it's hindering our students. So what you just saw, it hindered me, it hindered you, and most importantly, it hindered the message. Let's vote for us because we want education.
Decide who won tonight. So if you thought the government won, put your hands together. And if you thought the opposition won tonight, put your hands together. One more time. Government. Opposition. I'm calling it opposition wins tonight.
Great job, ladies. Thank you. All right, everyone, that concludes our speech night for tonight. I won't keep you any longer. We just want to give a thank you so much for coming out and supporting us. It means a lot to us. Really, really appreciate the money, the support. Now we can go out and compete against all the other colleges. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great night. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anna Patera, Director of Forensics at Solano Community College, and I'd like to thank you for watching Solano College Sports Network.